Something that'll become very obvious about me if I ever finish this other video I'm working on is that I love stories that trap people inside video games. And I think it's especially interesting to see what aspect of that premise each story chooses to zero in on and make its focus. Sword Art Online goes all in on being a power fantasy, for better or worse. Log Horizon is all about understanding how the world around you functions and the effect it has on people. Konosuba and ReZero are both about how your personal character defects can clash with the video game-like world you find yourself in. Which brings me to Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash, which chooses to focus almost entirely on the traumatic horrors of killing to survive. The cast has very little money, just enough to let them eat for a couple weeks if they budget it right. The only way to earn more is to kill monsters, collect the meager coins they drop, and sell their remains. They're very, very bad at this, so the bulk of these 3 episodes is them being silently depressed by the thought of starving to death in a cruel world that couldn't give less of a shit about them, while the last of their supplies and resources tick away like seconds on a clock counting down their very mortality. It's a lot heavier and bleaker than I bargained for, and not exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for in an age where financial stability and employment in the real world have so many question marks surrounding them. It is pretty interesting to see the 6 of them all struggle to finally beat a single goblin, the weakest monster in the world, only for it to take absolutely everything they've got and then leave them too horrified to really be all that happy about their victory. But even though I think it's a good impulse to put this kind of weight on the most basic of video game kill quests, it feels like too much when you combine it with all of the other bleak shit the characters are also dealing with. The entire cast has amnesia. They wake up surrounded by strangers in a place none of them recognize, and then proceed to ask far too few questions once they find someone who does seem to know about this world. The one guy who does take charge and try to get answers just sort of stops and then leaves the show. I really don't get why everyone's so willing to go along with what they're told to do, or why none of them press the issue very much. But I guess I shouldn't expect much out of a setup that's supported entirely by mass amnesia. The problem with this sort of setup is that it leaves us with very little to define the characters. They're not even really character types so much as they are a collection of uninteresting qualities. This guy's too generic and bland. He's an irritating asshole I hope dies in a fire. He's too good and perfect to really be likable, and the girls are only really there for shots like this, and so she can feel bad about having big boobs. The closest thing to a good character is Moguzo, who's the most concerned with getting his memories back and loses himself in his love of cooking and carving. But he says and does so little, it's hard to latch onto him as a character I like. Beyond that, Yumi's design is nice, and I like archers, so I guess she's the second best character? I don't know. I feel like I can't latch onto these characters on a level any deeper than the criteria that kids use to determine their favorite Ninja Turtle. None of them have memories that go back more than a few days, so they're largely blank slates, other than the classes they chose to play. But the show goes pretty far out of its way not to show us anything interesting about those classes. They establish that the only way to become a thief is to spend a week or more training intensely under a master, and then promptly skip over all of that to the point where he's just a thief now. No scenes of him learning techniques, no attempt to make his teacher an interesting character, not even a training montage. It's likely because they want these characters to start at the absolute bottom and slowly inch their way up, but you've got to give us something. He's not even any good at being a thief after all that training. You could have skipped it altogether and just given him a knife and a new shirt, and it'd be pretty much the same. While I can see potential for things to grow and change in interesting ways, the characters as they are in the first 3 episodes are really weak, and the overall show is too depressing. They made this show incredibly bleak, at the expense of absolutely everything else that the show could and should have had. I think I'm gonna let this one go, unless someone tells me it really picks up later and becomes worth continuing with. Because right now, I can't think of a reason in the world to watch episode 4. If you'd like to hear about shows that don't make you think about the fact that life is pain and question the futility of your own existence, click any of these and then subscribe. I'm gonna go play with some kittens or something. I'll see you in the next one.